Okay, recording has started. So we ended off last week with a discussion about microwaves. Because we were talking about alternative forms of cooking. So if you recall, we had been talking about, well, the case brought lahalacha was if something was smoked. Okay, it's not cooked with a direct flame. It's cooked by means of smoke, or alternatively, another form of alternate cooking is cooking in natural hot springs. It's water that's been heated from low down in the earth, and you can cook meat and milk together, let's say underwater, however you manage to contrive that. Would that be considered prohibited min Torah or not? I think we said halacha that there was no definite. We couldn't pin you on it and say that okay, if somebody did this in the time of the Sanhedrin, you wouldn't get lashed for it, because it's not clear enough that it's prohibited. But then the question arises: well, let's say it was done, and now you want to know, is this permitted derabanan? At least is it not derabanan? Is it in Issa Deraisa, or is it an Issa Derabanan that we're kosher for? Meaning, is it permitted for hana? Are you allowed to have any benefit from it? Can you feed it to your dog? Is the easiest question when you hear mutar b'hana, you can feed it to your dog. Okay. And it turned out that there was machlokes even in that about whether or not you could, whether you would be permitted to benefit from it, and even down to contemporary poskim. It comes down to contemporary. We're talking about in the last couple hundred years. So the Aruch HaShulchan says that it's that smoking is only asur d'Rabbanan and would therefore be mutar. Sorry, he quoted the Levush, and said that the Levush said that it would be asur d'Rabbanan, therefore mutar b'hana. But he disagrees and holds he's not certain that it's d'oraisa, but it's a safek d'oraisa, he says. And whenever we have a safek d'oraisa, we have to go to chumrah. It's possible that this meat and milk that was cooked by the hot springs or by smoking is in fact, it could be an Issa D'Rabbanan, could be an Issa D'Oraisa. But if on the side that it's an Issa D'Oraisa, we have to be stringent and not permit any benefit from it. So we see that the Aruch HaShulchan, who's actually usually very, especially Litvishes, tend to follow the Aruch HaShulchan. But then there's the Chachmas Adam, who says no, it's straight out an Issa D'Rabbanan, and therefore it would be permitted by Hana. So you've got two heavyweight poskim who are saying one in each direction. So again, we have this principle that if you have a couple of heavyweight poskim, one saying mutar, one saying asur, then the question is usually going to boil down to how much of a loss are you taking for this? So if it's not such a big loss, then you say, okay, so why do I need to skirt the edge of the volcano? It's a big deal, it's potentially a d'oraisa, let's say, and then I say, okay, and it's not such a big loss, so why am I going to do this? But if it's something where somebody's liable to incur a big financial loss, then we will typically paskin for them, okay, look, we're not going to make you lose such a lot of money, therefore you can rely on the mekelim. Okay. Now that brought us onto the discussion of microwaves. And we said microwaves are a completely novel form of cooking that nobody in the time of the Gemara or even in the last 100 years would have thought of. And microwaves are unique because while it seems pretty clear to me that microwaves cannot be any worse than smoking or cooking with hot springs, because smoking and hot springs have a heat source. It's just not like a conventional fire. But a microwave doesn't even have a heat source. And if you've just been cooking something in the microwave and you open it up and take out the food and put your hands on the walls of the oven, it's cold. there's no heat source coming out of the microwave. It's a completely novel invention that that you're stimulating the molecules, the water molecules in your food and making them vibrate, and that causes it to cook. So your case, certainly cannot be more stringent than the case of the the hot springs and smoking. So certainly it would at least be as lenient as that, and there might be an argument for it being even more makil. Now, I was actually asking around, and somebody said that there was a tshuva of Rav Moshe, and unfortunately, it slipped my mind, and I didn't go looking for it. So again, I have to set myself homework to look up this tshuva of Rav Moshe to find out about what he says about microwave cooking. But I asked my my teacher of these halachas. I got my smicha from Rav Dan Hanan, and he said very simply, he never saw this form of cooking as doraisa because there's no fire at all. So that was all that he had to say on the matter. So if you're saying that it would seem to be that if there's an iyasur, then it's at worst a darabanan, which means that you'd have a very strong, if such a thing happened, you'd have a very strong argument to say, okay, so I can't eat it, but I can feed it to my dog. All right, that was the situation of the microwave. There was another point that I wanted to just touch on over here, which I think I'm going to skip a little bit through the halachas that we had been learning last week, because a lot of them are just not very practical. We're talking about making shampoo in a pot and whether that's permitted or not, because it might have meat and milk tastes mixing into the shampoo. But because you might have meat and milk ingredients at least in the shampoo, and this could come to us at the pot. The principle that I wanted to bring out now is actually the tam lifgam. Yeah, the principle of tam lifgam. Have we mentioned tam lifgam before in the shir?
No.
Okay. So tam lifgam is taste that is a negative taste. It's a harmful taste, or harmful again sounds like it's dangerous, but it's a deleterious, if you want to use fancy English. It's something that makes things worse. Okay. And when we have any prohibition of taste, of where a taste comes into something and makes it prohibited, we're talking about always where the taste is actually coming and improving the food. But if it's actually coming and causing damage to the flavor, then we say that's not considered an issur. It may not be permitted lechatchila in the case of basar b'chalav, but once something has already become a tam lifgam, then that's not going to prohibit anything. And that, by the way, tam lifgam is one of the hugest heterium that you'll find for any kind of kitchen accident. Okay, and that is because we have the concept of ben yomo kli. Just to tie it into what we were saying and why this is relevant is because, for example, if you were making this shampoo out of both meat and milk ingredients, let's say a guy made something in a pot that was shampoo that had all sorts of meat and milk ingredients, but he wasn't making it for food. That means it's not edible. It's not a pleasant taste. So while it wouldn't be permitted for the Jew to actually cook the meat and milk together, but tachlis, at the end of the story, you've got something that is inedible and has no good taste. So whatever taste got absorbed in the walls of the pot now is not going to cause any damage to anything that's subsequently cooked in it, and it's not even going to be called a basar b'chalav thing. So let's say you've got a Jew working for a non-Jew, and earlier in the day he cooked shampoo in his pot, and now he says, "Now I want you to cook me something else in this pot." Now, does he have to be worried that there's basar b'chalav in the pot, and as he stokes the fire underneath it, he's going to cause basar b'chalav? And we say, no, not really, because because it's a tam lifgam. So it's a negative taste. This has application in, as I said, in what we call a kli, which is Eino ben Yomo. Eino ben Yomo means it is not within a day of its last cooking. Okay, we have a principle that that the taste of let's say that I mean it works in both directions, but just for the sake of consistency, I'm going to say we've got a fleischiks pot that's had fleischiks cooked in it, and then by accident some milk got cooked in it. Okay, so we'll always start with it's the same is true in the reverse direction, so don't get confused with that. That's my disclaimer when I start out. But whenever we're talking about this, it works in both directions. But we're just, for the sake of convenience, we're just going to talk about a fleischiks pot. Okay, so we've got a fleischiks pot that had meat cooked in it in the morning, and it was we say that some flavor from the meat went into the pot and it's absorbed into the pot. Okay, and then we washed up the pot nicely, cleaned it. It's sparkling clean. There's nothing stuck to the walls. And then the same day, somebody went and cooked some milk inside that pot. Okay? Now that is going to be aser. Why? Because the taste of the meat that's absorbed in the walls of the pot is going to go directly into the milk. And it's a strong taste of meat that's coming in, and it will prohibit the milk. Okay, and of course the pot is going to need to be kosher too. But what happens is if we have a principle that blios, blios is the term we use for tastes that are absorbed into the body of a vessel, of a pot, a plate, or anything like that. Blios only retain their beneficial taste for 24 hours. So let's say, once again, our pot was used for cooking meat at 9 a.m. on Sunday morning, and it was cleaned in the interim so that there's no actual meat left on the walls. And the following day, whenever the cooking was finished, let's say the cooking was finished by 9 a.m. At 9:01 a.m., just to be clear, I don't want to go into edge cases here, but at 9:01 a.m. on Monday morning, somebody accidentally cooked milk in it. Okay, what we say there is that since it's more than 24 hours, any flavor of meat that was in the walls of the pot has now deteriorated and is now going to make a negative effect on the milk, and therefore the milk actually remains permitted, even though it was cooked in a fleishik pot, because it hadn't been used in the last 24 hours. Okay, now that, if you can remember anything in terms of any kitchen accidents, the first question that you're going to ask, if anything got cooked in the wrong place or something got messed up the first question you're going to ask is, was something cooked in it in the past 24 hours? And not just something fleishik had to have been cooked in it in the past 24 hours. If it was used for cooking vegetables later in the day, the vegetables don't count. They don't add to the flavor. They don't detract from the flavor. They're just neutral. Okay, it's got to have been real meat that's put its taste into the walls. Now there are going to be some subtleties on that we'll discuss at a later stage. But sorry, take a drink. Okay. All right. So in the the ben yomo, the Eino ben yomo part is one of your big heterim, and the next thing that's also a very big heter is if you don't know whether a pot has been used in the last 24 hours or not, the assumption is that it wasn't, and you can rely on that. So unless you know for sure that the pot was used for meat in the last 24 hours, then the milk that was cooked inside that pot is permitted. The pot itself needs to be kashered, because tachlis, you've got a fleishik pot that's had milchiks cooked in it. So the pot is going to be a problem, and you'll generally find that that's your general rule for kitchen accidents, is that the food will usually turn out okay, and the pot will need to be kashered. Okay, that's not.
Does pot need to be kasher, or if you wait a certain amount of time, that's not.
Okay, so kashering is another as topic to talk about. I mean, for practical purposes, we have a principle of kabbalah kachbol. So however the food went into it is how you're going to get it out. And that's just sort of a broad strokes thing to say that if the kli was used with cold and you accidentally put some milk in or some cheese into a fleischiger plate and it left a bit of residue on it, then you wipe it off with some cold water and there was no damage done. It was cold, there was no taste transfer, nice and easy. If it was done with hot, like if it was done with cooking, then you will have to use cooking in order to get the taste out, and that's hagala, with boiling water. If it is something that was used over the flame, then you'll need a flame to kasher it. So that's barbecue grids and things like that. You can kasher a barbecue grid simply by holding it over the flame, as long as the flame is actually heating it up. If you've got a flame licking through the grid, it kashers itself. Okay, now the stam kli eino ben yomo, by the way, that I mean, you would normally say, like, hold on a second, why would, if you're in a case of doubt, isn't this a case of a d'oraisa? And if you've got a suffix d'oraisa, we've just been saying that you have to go stringently. If you don't know, surely you should have to assume that it was ben yomo. Okay, and there's an interesting answer here that this is actually called a sveiksveika. So sveiksveika is a term in halacha that if you have a double doubt, which means you can say there's a doubt whether there's a doubt about its status in this direction. So if it's in one direction, then it'll be okay anyway. If it's the other direction that it's not okay, then there's another doubt that even if you say it's not okay, then there's another doubt that can introduce it. So you've sort of got if we say every doubt is like a 50-50, then a sveiksveika reduces it to a 25% chance that you've actually got a problem, and you now don't have to, and you can therefore disregard that even on a d'oraisa. Okay, so what's the sveiksveika over here? Doubles. It's actually a machlokes between the poskim here, well, between the Rashba and the Tur. The Rashba says that maybe we can say that the pot has not been used at all in the last 24 hours. Okay, it's possible that the pot wasn't used at all. Okay, and it's because if the pot wasn't used at all, then you don't have a problem. And even if it was used, maybe it was used for water or for and if it was only used for water, that actually weakens the taste of whatever was in the pot before. Okay, or so therefore that's the sveiksveika of the Rashba. Even maybe it wasn't used in the last 24 hours, and even if it was used, maybe it was just used for water or paraba or something like that. Okay, so maybe it's just for water because water dafka weakens the taste. The Torah has a different one. It says maybe the pot hasn't been used within the last 24 hours, and even if it was, maybe the food that was cooked in the pot is giving a bad taste to the food being cooked right now. So in other words, not all flavors go well together. This tangentially is the reason why it's actually permitted to buy honey without a hechsher. If it's unflavored honey, if it's flavored honey, okay, we may have issues. But if you have pure bees honey, and I remember this when I was a couple of years ago. I was traveling in Bulgaria, and just on the side of the road there was this truck with masses and masses of jars of honey. I was wondering. At the time, I didn't know this halacha. If I had, I would have bought something, and I thought, what a pity, because it looks so good. But the fact is that the honey that's made by goyim, you don't have to worry about any. I mean, even though they do heat up the honey to purify it and do whatever, but if there was any taste inside the walls of the kalim, there's nothing. There's no flavor that you're going to put into honey that's going to make it taste better. So everything, as far as honey is concerned, is going to make it worse. So even if there is a time in it, it's a time nifgam. Okay.
Well, again, so halacha l'maisa, you don't officially you don't really need a hechsher.
You don't really need a hechsher on honey, no.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there may be people who disagree with that. As far as I recall, the halacha is that you can get honey without a hechsher. Okay, again, unflavored honey. If they've injected some kind of flavor. All right.
You're only talking about bees honey though. You're not talking. Well, you're not talking about date or the vash.
Yeah, bee honey. Bee honey. We're talking about. Yeah. Apparently, you also get hornet honey, but that doesn't sound like a very smart thing to farm. I don't know. It just doesn't sound like the cost benefit equation is good there.
No.
Okay. And right, so that was the point of the tour, is that it's possible that that whatever food was cooked in the pot before, even if you say that something was cooked in the pot before, perhaps it's something that's got a taste combination that doesn't work well with what you're cooking now. I mean, let's say something's got a lemony taste. You don't necessarily want that lemony taste to be going into a white sauce or something like that. It doesn't. Some flavors just don't go well together. In that case, it's again called tamlif gum. Even something that's not 24 hours old can be a tamlif gum if the two flavors just don't match. Okay. So that is the general principle of tamlif gum and stam kli eno ben yomo. Okay, and that's very worthwhile whenever you're dealing with any kind of kitchen accidents. All right, so I'm going to jump through my notes now and talk about cheese. So cheese is a very interesting subject because I'm almost unsure where to start with this because if I jump straight into the halach and the Shulchan Aruch, it's going to sound very weird. So I'm going to start with a little bit of a preamble to how cheese is made. Do we have any experts over here in cheese making who've seen it done?
No. I just know they use rennet. That's all.
Okay, you can use any catalyst, but I think about just over a year ago, we went to a place. There's a goat farm in very nearby Beit Shemesh. And they have a factory. They've got a factory called Iza Paziza, where they make all these goat's cheeses, and they have these workshops where you can sit and make goat's cheeses yourself. And you start with the milk and you heat it up, and you put a little bit of vinegar into the milk, and the vinegar acts as your catalyst to separate the curds from the whey. So that was a very enjoyable thing, by the way. Once COVID is over and you're looking for things to do with your kids, it's an excellent outing. Yes, you use some kind of a catalyst that makes the milk curdle. And there were two, in the times of the Gemara, there were two types of catalysts that they used to use. One is to use stomach enzymes, which is called rennet. So you typically, let's say you're a non-Jewish manufacturer and you have no care about how you make your cheese. Your simplest answer is to take a piece of the stomach lining from the caver. I'm not sure how it's one of the stomachs of the animal. I don't remember the Latin word for what this for which the stomach is. There's like the omasum and the I can't even remember the terms but the cow has got 4 stomachs, and the one has got this catalyst in it that causes the milk to curdle. So you just basically take a piece of the meat and toss it into the milk, and wait for it to react, and then that will cause the milk to curdle. Okay, and there's another way of doing it, which is to collect the enzymes, which is a lot more of a Jewish way. By the way, we'll get to this, but you can also do this with kosher cheese. You just have to make sure that the piece of rennet that you're putting into the cheese comes from a kosher shechted animal. It has to, and we'll get into the reasons for that hopefully tonight. Okay, and the other way of making cheese is by using the milk itself. Now, how do you do this? You get a calf to suckle from its mother, and after it's suckled from its mother, you wait a little while. I'm not sure if this is measured in minutes or hours or what, and then you shech the calf. You cut it open and you go straight for the stomach, and inside the calf's stomach is the milk that it just drank. But it's had a chance at this point to react with its stomach walls. And now you take that milk from the calf's stomach, and that itself has already got your chemical rennet in it, and you can pour that milk into the milk that you want to use for cheese. Okay, and that will also do the job.
You're shechting this calf.
Right. So you shech the calf that's had a drink from its mother, and then so the milk that it just drank is in its stomach, and now it has had a chance to react with its own stomach, and it has that chemical, and then you take that and put it into a big vat of milk that will cause the milk itself, the larger vat of milk, to curdle.
After you shechted the calf, can we use that calf for eating?
100%. That would be a big waste otherwise. You shechted it.
Yeah. I just was wondering if there was some reason that you wouldn't because of the milk business or something. Okay.
No, I mean any animal might have drunk milk before you shechted it.
Right.
So now there's going to be a very interesting question about this, about what is the status of this milk that's in the calf's stomach. So this is actually the second method over here. Is the first one that the Shulchan Aruch starts to discuss.
When you talk about status, are you talking about parv or milk?
Yes, exactly. Is this milk even considered to be milk? And what would happen if this milk were subsequently cooked with meat? That is a very loud purr you've got over there. It's okay. It's fine. It's not disturbing.
Not leave me alone.
But he's definitely a happy cat. Okay, so the question here is like, are you allowed to cook this partially digested milk with meat? Okay. And it's possible that this milk could be parva. So what we're going to see about this is that if the answer is it depends on what state the milk is in the calf's stomach. There are two stages that we talk about. There are two phases of this milk. One is called tzalul. Is that the right term? It's called tzalul? Yeah, tzalul, which is liquid. Basically, it looks exactly like the milk as it came out of the cow. Okay, and the other form is karush, where inside the calf's stomach it's already started to congeal, and it looks more solid than it did when it came out of the mother. So those are the two phases of milk inside the calf's stomach: tzalul being liquid, and karush being not quite solid, but it started to congeal.
Just the curd and whey we spoke about?
It's the what?
Just the curd and wheys that we spoke about?
Yeah, so the curds and whey, I mean, that's actually more applicable to the milk that's out there that we actually milked and that we want to turn into cheese. Right. When you add the catalyst, that'll cause the curds to separate from the whey. Okay. So we have a Mishnah in Chulin. Hopefully you'll remember this, Rabbi Eliezer.
Oh,
okay. Remember, a kosher animal that suckled from a treif animal, and a treif animal that suckled from a kosher animal. That's okay. We're not talking about even the species. We're talking about an animal with a mortal injury.
Right.
Right. So that's literally a treifa. So if the mother was a treifa, and there are some animals that you can see that they're a treifa even if they're alive, and the calf goes and suckles from the mother, but the calf is perfectly healthy as far as we know, and then we shech the calf. So the calf's meat is for sure okay, but now the question is, what's the status of the milk that we find in the calf's stomach? Okay, what does the Mishnah tell us about that milk?
I would think it would be a treif.
Yeah, that's right. The milk came from a treifa.
Right.
The milk came from a treifa. So the Mishnah says that the that the milk that's found in the calf's stomach is aser. Okay, and in the reverse case, if the calf is the one that's a treifa, and well, so it suckled from its mother, and we thought we were going to do this lovely trick, and we shechted the calf, and we opened it up to get the milk out of the stomach, and then we see this thing's got a big hole in its lung. So we say, okay, so the calf's meat for sure is no good. It's a treifa. We can't eat it. But what about the milk that's inside there? Can we still use that? Are we still allowed to use that as a catalyst for making cheese? And we said that's the milk, and the Mishnah tells us that the milk that came out of there is mutar. Right? What's the reasoning over there? It seems that the milk is just, it's kanus b'mei eha. All it is it's gathered in. It's the same milk that came out of the mother, and therefore it is it has the status of whatever the mother is, not what the calf is.
We have no worry about it. We're not using it for meat or anything. It's milk. It's a different thing. So
right. So now, having said this about the status of the milk vis-a-vis its treifness or kashrus, we should then apply the same reasoning to the milk to say, well, is it considered milchik, or is it now considered something that's part of the body of the calf, or maybe it's not really milk anymore. It's lost its status of milchikness. And based on what we've said here, it would seem that the milk is milk. We're giving it the status of the mother, so therefore it looks like nothing changed. However, the Gemara seems to contradict the Mishnah, which is an interesting thing. And we're going to have to try and reconcile that, because the Gemara says that the halacha is that both a kosher animal that's suckled from a treifa animal and a treif animal that's suckled from a kosher animal is mutar. Okay, why? Because the Gemara says it's called pirsha de alma. It's just a general waste product. It's nothing. It's not a. It doesn't have the status of the body of the animal. It doesn't have the status of whatever it's suckled from. It's a completely new thing. It's ki'ilu. Sorry to be kind of gross about it, but if an animal's saliva or an animal's urine isn't fleishik, isn't milchik, it's not really even okay. The fact that it's edible is a different story, but it's called a pirsha. It's a waste product. Now, the fact that it turns out to be edible is immaterial. We still call it a waste product to distinguish it from the fact that it's not part of the animal's body. It's a pirsha. It's something that is separated from the animal and doesn't have its status, not the status of the mother, not the status of the calf. It's just a pirsha, and that's what the Gemara says. So the problem is it's not common to find the Gemara that seems to out and out disagree with the Mishnah, because the Mishnah precedes the Gemara, and it doesn't seem that there's any dissenting opinion inside the Mishnah that the Gemara is relying on. Now, if it was the case that you had, one Tana says this, one Tana says that, and then the Gemara says something like one of the Tanaim, I say, okay, that proves that the halacha is like the Tana that the Gemara is saying like, but there's no dissenting opinion in the Mishnah. So we have to find some kind of reconciliation. How did the Gemara say this when the Mishnah unambiguously said the other way? They said something different. So 3 answers offered by the Rishonim. The first one that's given is by the Rif and the Rambam. The Rif is also known as Rav Al-Fasi. And so the Rif and the Rambam say that the psak of the Mishnah was actually retracted. So they're pushed into a corner where they say it's so obviously contradictory that it must be that some other Tanaim ruled differently, and they're just not mentioned in the Mishnah, and that psak was basically retracted. So therefore, the milk so according to them, the milk that's found in the stomach is no longer called milk. Okay, even if it's liquid. And even if it's mutter to cook this with meat. Okay, so the reason it's no longer called milk is because once it begins to be digested, it's called a pirsha b'alma. It's no longer it's a waste product. It's not considered the milk that came from the mother, and it's not considered part of the body of the calf. Okay, independent entity, parva. That's the Rif and the Rambam. Okay, Rabbeinu Tam is one of the Tosfos. And he says that the Mishnah, that the difference is that the Mishnah and the Gemara are talking about different cases. The Mishnah is referring to tzalul, when it's still liquid milk and it still has the same appearance as it came out of the mother. So therefore, that makes sense as far as the Mishnah is concerned, because it'll take on the status of the mother because it still looks exactly like the milk that came out of the mother. If the mother's a treifa, the milk is from a treifa. If the mother is kosher, even if the calf is a treifa, it's still kosher because it still looks like the original milk.
Is that called follow? You said follow.
The what?
Did you say follow? Follow.
It's going to follow. It's going to follow the mother.
Follow the mother.
Yes. So it'll follow the status of the mother because it still looks like the milk that came out of the mother. However, says Rabbeinu Tam, the Gemara is referring to karosh, where it has congealed and it started to separate. So now he says that it makes sense in the Gemara because the Gemara is talking about a case where it doesn't look like what came out of the mother, and it's a separate din. It's a completely separate din over here. So this is Rabbeinu Tam. Okay, and then Rashi simply didn't have, before the lovely Gemara editions that we have nowadays, which is called the Vilna edition of the Gemara, where everything is we've got a strong Masorah and everyone's got the same daf, and we all learn the same daf every day together. For those people who do daf yomi, right? But back in the time of Rashi, Rashi was before the printing press. So if you had a Gemara, it was handwritten, and you were passing them, and people were copying them from one person to another, and mistakes crept in, and different versions of the Gemara were in existence. Rashi's version of the Gemara did not have this psak at all. Okay, which means that he paskened the halacha exactly like the Mishnah, which means that even chalav karosh is considered milk. Is considered milchik. It follows the status of the mother, and even once it's congealed, it is still considered milchiks, and would be aser minat Torah to cook with milk. So those are our three opinions. Okay, and they cover all our bases. Once again, there's Rashi who says that everything is considered milchik. Whether it's congealed or whether it's liquid, it's still got the status of milk that came out of the mother. The Rif and the Rambam take the exact opposite view and say that whatever the Mishnah said was retracted, and what the Gemara says is that whether it's solid or liquid, it is not milk anymore. It's a completely new entity and is considered basically parava. And then there's the middle view of Rabbeinu Tam, who says, well, it depends on whether it's karosh or tzalul. If it's tzalul, it's still like it comes from the mother. If it's karosh, it's like it's a separate entity that was in the body of the calf. And what we're going to see now in the last couple of minutes, we're going to jump back into the halacha that is stated in the Shulchan Aruch. So if you look at the Shulchan Aruch Pei Zayin Sif Tes, number 9, chalav hanimtza b'keva, if you find milk inside the stomach of a calf, eino chalav, it is not considered milchiks. Umutar levashel bo basar, and you would be 100% permitted to cook meat with it. Afilu betzalul sheba, even if it's completely clear. Now, who's the Shulchan Aruch paskening like? Are you listening?
Yeah, I'm trying.
Do you remember our opinions? So the Shulchan Aruch is saying that it's not that the milk that's inside the stomach of the calf is not milchik. You can cook meat in it.
Not Rashi.
It's not Rashi.
Rif and the Rambam.
Yep, Rif and the Rambam.
We
Rif
can
and the
cook
Rambam.
it-
Very
we
good.
can-
Okay, I'm glad you're with us there.
We can cook it because
We can cook it because, as far as the Rif and the Rambam say, that this is that it's called the Pirsha Ba'alma. It's no longer associated with the mother. It's not even really associated with the calf. It's a completely new entity, and it is parava. This and that, by the way, the Shulchan Aruch in general, if the Rif and the Rambam agree on something, the Shulchan Aruch will almost always paskin like them. The Shulchan Aruch, I think, uses three primary sources, three Rishonim, at least to to make his psak. There's the Rif, the Rambam, and the Ran, and he'll usually go like the majority of those three views. So here he follows the Rif and the Rambam and says it's parva. However, we carry on and see the Ramah, the Shulchan Aruch himself comes and quotes and says v'yesh misa oser. However, there are opinions that prohibit this. Okay, and he quotes the Tosfos and the Rosh and the Rabbeinu Tam, which is the middle opinion, who say that it is not permitted with tzalul, because the tzalul is still like the mother. Okay, and the Ramah adds in brackets over here. No, again, that's our halacha. That's how we paskin, says the Ramah. Ramah again is the Ashkenazi posek. So we see out of this that the Shulchan Aruch, the Mechaber, holds like the Rif and the Rambam, and the Ramah holds like Rabbeinu Tam, and therefore so Rabbeinu Tam and the Ramah say that this milk, if the milk is clear, if it's liquid at least, if it's liquid, then it would be prohibited to cook meat in it. And just to complete the picture, we have another Achron who holds like Rashi, that even if it is congealed, even if it's karush, it's still considered to be like milk. So he holds like Rashi. So actually, there's just one more paragraph over here. Halacha l'maaseh, we're going to have a machlokes here between Sfaradim and Ashkenazim. So the Sfaradim, the Shach says that from the Beit Yosef, we see that the Mechaber holds like the stam. Hold on, what's the stam? The Kaf HaChaim. Okay, so for halacha for Sfaradim is generally the preeminent contemporary posek for Sfaradim is the Kaf HaChaim. And he actually says that he's machmir. He's machmir like the Ramah, that we should rather not rely on this unless there's a case of hefsed maruba. We've said that hefsed maruba, if there's a big loss, then okay, you can rely on the Rif and the Rambam and the Chaber. I mean, those are big shoulders. You can certainly rely on them, says the Kaf HaChaim, but ideally you should not. You should be machmir on this. Ashkenazim.
Can I ask a question? When something is congealed but you apply heat, doesn't it convert to a liquid status?
It depends. I mean, this is all chemistry. It's not just. It totally depends on what substance you're talking about.
Well, what if you took this porridge thing from the calf? It's a shechted calf.
Yeah.
And then you decide to cook the calf meat in that porridge thing.
Well, that's exactly our shaila that we've got over here. Is what happens if you take that milk out of the calf's stomach and use it to cook some of the calf's meat.
So, but would it not become a liquid?
Would it
and
become,
milk?
I mean, the question is not what will it become. It's not because of the phase of whether it's solid or liquid. It's because has it converted from being mother's milk to being a new entity. And even if it's a new entity, then it's a new entity. Even if you subsequently turn it back to liquid, it's not going to revert to being the old entity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's, according to the Rif, the Rambam, and Rashi all agree that there's no difference between solid and liquid. It's just that Rashi disagrees with him about what the halacha is. But the Rabbeinu Tam is the one who makes this distinction between solid and liquid. And according to Rabbeinu Tam, if it is liquid, it's still the original mother's milk. As soon as it's become solid, it's no longer the original mother's milk. So once it's no longer the original mother's milk, even if you had to somehow turn it back into a liquid, it still wouldn't be the original mother's milk. And that's really the diak that he's making over here. Anyway, the halacha for Ashkenazim is that is that actually the Ashkenazim go one step more machmir, because the Chachmas Adam and Yad Ephraim say that chalav karosh is only mutar in a hefsid meruba. Meaning that for sure the Ashkenazim say that the liquid milk is milk legamre. Okay, and if you have to cook meat inside that would be totally asur and no hefsid meruba case for Ashkenazim. And even with solid with congealed milk inside the calf's stomach, that should still lechatchila be considered as if it's milkex. But in a hefsed meruba, if it happened that this was cooked with meat and it was going to be a big loss, then you can rely on Rabbeinu Tam to say, okay, this is mutar, and you can still have it. Okay, so there's going to be a lot more to discuss on this. But we're out of time now. So if there are any further questions, go ahead. And if not, you can think about questions. And if you have questions later on, you can always post them in the WhatsApp. And we can answer those later. Okay. So, chew on that.
Yeah. No milk.
Few days now of fleischiks, only meat meals. So looking forward to having some cheese meals after Purim.
Okay. Excellent.
Okay,
Okay, thanks everyone for joining me. I really appreciate everyone joining me. I know it's not it wasn't an easy time to call a shiur, so thank you very much. I appreciate you all coming, and Purim Sameach to all.
Thank you.
Thank you.